So I want to talk to you guys about what I feel is one of the main issues in politics. Now there are a bunch of issues, but I feel like this one kind of takes the cake and kind of in a way defines a lot of the other issues that we come across. So to get into this, I want to talk about how I kind of first developed my interest in politics. It kind of goes back to my senior year of high school. I was 18, taking my AP government class, enjoying it, learning a lot, and alongside that, you had Barack Obama running for president, and he was actually the first person I voted for, the first person that kind of inspired me to get involved and to kind of learn things, you know. So not only was he very charismatic, but the thing about his message that really attracted me, and I think attracted most Americans that did vote for him, was the idea that he was going to change the way the system worked, right? So I remember in his ad he had a quote or something that was kind of like, his aim is not to play the same game in Washington but better. Rather, his aim was to change the way the game was played completely. Now, if we're being honest and we're looking back, and you even ask him, he'll be honest with you. You know, they asked him in one of his exit interviews if he feel like he accomplished that, and even he said no. So I voted for Obama in 2018, and about 2 years into his presidency, I started seeing all of this crazy stuff online. You know, because I remember vividly, like when it was time to vote for him, one of the main draws about him is that he pulled everybody in, right? People were ready to get engaged again. Because I grew up in a community, as I think a lot of us did, where people just unplugged from politics. They were just like, this is nonsense. These people are just doing whatever they want to do. Nothing's helping me, so why even be involved, right? And Obama had a lot of people running back like, hey, this guy's different, you know? But like I said, about 2 years into his presidency, I remember the internet started going after him. And people that I respected, that I knew voted for him, were like, okay, he's not really about it. And that kind of made me curious, like, why? Because he was such a good, you know, politician, I guess, and you kind of believed him. So I started looking more into it, and I found that he was more or less playing the same game in Washington, and not even that much better. So he wasn't doing what he said he would do in his ad, right? Now, what's this game that I'm talking about? So let's talk about his campaign. In 2008, he was running. He raised a lot of money from Wall Street. And you learn that with that comes the payback, right? So it's not like they're just donating to his campaign because they want him to be president, because they believe in his stance on gun rights or like abortion. No, these are financial firms, you know? So they're going to donate with they want to get a return on investment, right? It's like an investment for them. So now, I looked into some stuff and I found WikiLeaks dropped in like 2016 during Hillary's race, and it exposed a guy named John Podesta. Now, John Podesta worked on Obama's transition team. So when he won the presidency, you know, the transition team is basically the team that executes in basically switching you over from being a candidate to being an actual president. So what they do, they suggest cabinet positions, and they basically transition from campaign mode into, you know, executive mode, or being the president mode, right, if you will. So John Podesta got an email from David Frum is his name. David Frum, who used to be an executive at Citibank. Now, this email, it was entitled List, right? This is according to WikiLeaks. It was entitled, the subject of the email was List. And what that was a list of people that this Citibank executive named David Frum wanted Obama to put in his cabinet. Now, that makes you think, why the hell is a president taking advice from who he wants to put in his cabinet from a Citibank executive? Weird, right? And you learn eventually that they give him, I think, a list of about 31 people that they wanted him to put in his cabinet, from Secretary of State, I believe, was on there, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development. And you find out that Obama, in fact, did put the most of these people that David Frum from Citibank suggested that he put in his cabinet, he put in his cabinet. Now, my question is why? That's corruption. That's what corruption is. The only issue is that in America, they legalize corruption. And that's what it is. So, also Eric Holder, who I didn't know this, but Eric Holder was actually on that list that David Frum gave to, you know, John Podesta for Obama to put on in his cabinet too. And as we know, maybe we know, Eric Holder became the Attorney General under Obama. So we kind of live in a situation in America where corporations and big money interests really control a lot of what happens. And that's the reason why our government doesn't respond to us. There was a study that was done a few years ago by Princeton, and it found that Princeton, and I forget, they did a study in conjunction with another organization, I forget the name, but they found that out of all of the legislation that passes, the majority of the legislation that passes through our Congress is backed by big money interest, or they're the ones that get their will reflected in law as opposed to the people. Now, if you look at how our will is reflected into the laws that get passed, it's literally statistical noise. So that means the things that we want are just noise, in essence, when it comes to legislators that are writing the laws. So the laws that they write reflect the will of wealthy people. And that's the main issue, I believe, with politics. And that's the reason why, and Obama didn't do away with that. And that's the reason why he wasn't able to change the system. Because he didn't really try, in essence. I mean, maybe I know he put a limit on lobbyists, right? And lobbyists are basically people that go that talk in, basically behind closed doors with legislators and with people that represent us, and they pay them in a lot of cases, or they try to lobby them to have them write legislation that reflects what they want. So Obama did do something about lobbyists. He did limit the amount of lobbyists or something like that. But he did not systemically change the way that our government functions. And that's where he failed. And even he'll say that, right? I remember I read his book, The Audacity of Hope, and he had this portion that talked about, yes, a lot of times these politicians spend a lot of time with these lobbyists and these people that have special interests that want their will reflected in law. And literally these politicians start to believe what they believe, as opposed to believing what the people. How much time do they spend with the people? They don't spend no private time with me. You know what I'm saying? So why do these wealthy people, these oligarchs, if you will, why do they get to have so much close quarter contact with the people that are supposed to represent us? It's super interesting. And I have another point that I wanted to bring up. It's about healthcare. We're the only country in the world, and this is coming into the discussion right now. I've been hearing a lot about it recently, so I wanted to talk about it. We're the only country in the world that doesn't allow the citizens or our government that represents us. We don't allow our government to negotiate for cheaper drug prices. It's the reason why we pay so much for drug prices. I'm a diabetic. I would have to pay $300 for a vial of insulin. I said this if I didn't have insurance. Insulin's been around for 100 years. Why is it that it's still so expensive? One of the basic tenets of capitalism is, prices go down as you have competition. People find innovation and they find ways to make things cheaper. And the prices are supposed to go down. That didn't happen with insulin. Why? Because of cronyism. We can't even... Another basic element of capitalism is negotiation. And our government is not allowed to negotiate on our behalf for cheaper drugs. It makes no sense. And that's the issue with politics. So one of the things I'm trying to do with this channel is to get people re-engaged, right? Growing up, the reason why the people that I knew were never engaged is because they knew the system didn't work for them. It didn't reflect what they wanted. So now we know why. Because of the money in politics. So the idea now is to stand up and do something about it. The idea now is to stand up and fight against candidates that take big money. Fight against these candidates that lie and play games about and lie about their record. I mean, that's really what we're up against right now. And the other alternative would be to sit back and do nothing. But then again, we've already been living in these horrible conditions. What will that profit us? We have nothing to lose at this point. So I mean, the idea is right now we have to get up and do something about it. We have to change this system because the corruption it's literally what's costing us our survival in a lot of cases. 30,000 to 45,000 people die every year in this country due to lack of health care. So it's costing us our lives. Why is it that prescription drugs are so expensive? It's costing us our lives. So these are things that we have to get involved in. And I want to just provide more information. And we're going to rock out. All right. So keep it banging. Keep tuned in. Subscribe, like, do all that stuff. We're going to grow this channel. It's going to be popping. Peace. We'll talk.